Chairman C. Naveen Sharma, my other colleagues in the Managing Committee, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of ICAI Dubai Chapter and its Managing Committee, it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this event. We thank and appreciate continued support of our sponsors, our title sponsors, Aramco Group, titanium sponsors, Hamdia Free Zone, principal sponsors, NMC and UAE Exchange, Danube Group, Mayur Batra Group, Shobha Reality, Oasis Investment, and the Delhi Solutions. Our institutional partner, DPS Schools Group, platinum sponsors, Lulu International Group, Commercial Bank of Dubai, Malabar Gold and Diamonds, AGMC, IFCO Group, Al Rawabi Dairy, Gulf Islamic Investments, Dubai Sport City, Swiss Singapore, and last but not the least, our media partner, Khalid Tank. We thanks once again to all our sponsors. Now coming to today's event, the journey is the reward. This is the Chinese proverb. What does this mean? There can be many interpretations of this Chinese proverb, but in my view, success is not a place at which one arrives, but rather the spirit with which one undertakes and continues the journey. While we may generally think that reward always is in the nature of tangible benefit, but it's not always true. The memories we make is also the reward. The journey provides you with the coded moments that will endure and stand the test of the time. And more importantly, in the process of this journey, the journey itself is guaranteed. Every day you have a chance to get better, to learn something new, to meet someone new, to solve problems in different ways. In a world where nothing is guaranteed, living in and appreciating the present can sometimes be the greatest reward of all. So what's the outcome of the journey? The outcome of the journey is learning. This brings to our theme of today's event, learning is a journey. Today we have with us two eminent personalities who have already achieved so much in their professional and business lives, but their journey is still continuing, which means their learning is still continuing. Today they will share their learnings with us so that we can also be inspired and learn from their journey of success. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming CA Sanjay Manchanda, CEO of Nakheel. Mr. Naveen Valrani, CEO of Arcadia Education and board member of Al Shirawi Group. We also welcome Mr. Tariq Qureshi of Med Talks, who will be having conversation with Mr. Sanjay Manchanda. Please give him a big round of applause. Thank you and have a great event and happy learning. Now I request our chairman, CA Naveen Sharma, to please come on the stage to deliver his chairman's address.
Good morning. Hope you had nice holidays, and we can see the attendance is less because of holidays. On behalf of ICAI Dubai chapter, I welcome each one of you for the last breakfast meeting of the current managing committee. The current managing committee's tenure will be over by end of next month, and we can host event for the next 2 weeks only. We all know that it is very difficult to pass CA exams. However, even after passing the exam, learning does not stop, because learning is a lifelong journey. Today, because of advancement in technology, everything around us is changing very fast. I passed my CA in the year 1990, and I have no hesitation to admit that most of the syllabus tools which I have studied have already become outdated. Learning is a journey, not a destination. It is a self-directed and self-paced journey of discovery and not a forced march. If we enjoy our journey, our lives again gain meaning. Journey is the real reward. Today, we have two speakers and one moderator with us who has set very high standard for all of us. CA Sanjay Manchanda Saab is one of the most accomplished chartered accountant in Dubai. Whenever we talk about chartered accountant profession, we always say about Sanjay Saab. I can tell you, sir, on behalf of 3,000 plus chartered accountants and everyone who are present here, that you made us proud, and we are proud of your achievements. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation to address all of us. Give a big round of applause to C.S. Sanjay Manchanda. We are fortunate to have Mr. Tariq Qureshi, founder, CEO of Mad Talks. He is a finest thinker in Dubai. When he spoke in the same hall on January 20th, earlier this year, he shared what is coming in the future, and everybody started thinking. He is Harvard alumni. He has his own unique style. Thank you, sir, for coming to our chapter again. We are fortunate to have Mr. Naveen Valrani, CEO, Arcadia Education, and board member of Al-Shirawi Group. Although he will be formally introduced by my ex-com colleague later, as I know him for the last 17 years, let me share some lesser-known facts about him. He has devoted his life for learning. He is a graduate from world-famous University UPenn and also did his MBA from London School of Business. Still, he is pursuing his education. In addition to managing more than 20 complex companies on a daily basis, he is finding time to pursue his education. Hold on your applause. It is not enough. He is the co-founder of the Arcadia School, Arcadia Education. And I am not surprised, but you will be surprised to know that every Tuesday, he takes a class himself. He is the one who has recently started now famous junior MBA program in Dubai. Give a big round of applause to Mr. Naveen Valrani. Moreover, his work ethics and knowledge always inspire me. We still remember when he came first time last year in January and addressed our chapter. We enjoy his online blog as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause to all our speakers. With today's meeting, your chapter will have 142 CP hours with collective CP of more than 54,000. We have added 1,133 new members as on June 30th. As much as 40% of our members are first-time members into the chapter, which we can say our chapter is now 40% means it's a very high number. In 1 year we have added, and we added with the help of LinkedIn. As you are aware that now your chapter is registered with the DIFC and you can pay your membership fees online. Give a big round of applause to ICAI Dubai chapter. May God bless our chapter. Now I would like to share with you briefly about the upcoming events. On coming Saturday, we will have a very unique meeting. We will host a very special meeting for our members and their spouses. I am extremely delighted to share with you that Bollywood actress, model, producer, and beauty queen, Dia Mirza will address all of us. The theme of the meeting is Real to Real, redefining the idea of success. Do not miss this unique event. Time has come for the annual family bowling event. It will be held on 7th September. And finally, annual general meeting, AGM, will take place on 29th of September. Now, I would like to ask Secretary of the chapter, Anish Mehta, to come on the podium and take the proceedings of the meeting further.
Thank you, Chairman. So without further ado, let's start with our first session. And the session titled is Journey is the Reward. To introduce the speakers, I will request my ex-com colleague, Anurag Chaturvedi, to please do the honor.
Good morning, members and guests. Today we are here to listen to this talk on Journey is a Reward. And our next session, we're going to unlock what makes this statement true. Our next speaker has distinguished career in finance, management, and strategy. He joined Nakheel as a consultant in 2011 and then joined them as Chief Executive Officer in 2012. He has served PricewaterhouseCoopers for long 25 years as partner. He has many achievements to his fold over his 30 years long professional career. And to name a few, he managed one of the complex and largest financial restructuring of the Nakheel that involved a debt of $16 billion. He has successfully completed one of the first financial restructuring of the largest jewelry retail, the Mass. He has implemented and delivered a saving of $7 billion on first adoption of his business plan and increased the asset base to $14 billion. Give a big round of applause to him. In his career, he worked and advised various large corporate multinationals on matters concerning strategy and management. He has been a speaker on various syndicated platforms and institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome C.A. Sanjay Manchanda. And in conversation with Mr. Sanjay Manchanda, I would like to introduce Tariq Qureshi as well. Tariq is not a new face to the institute itself. He has delivered various speeches and thoughts on that. Tariq is a founder and CEO of Mad Talks, a storytelling platform that captures the stories shaping the future and leadership and innovation, entrepreneurship, and breakthrough thinking. He has served various global conglomerate in various executive roles, including Bloomberg Media, the Times and Sunday Times newspaper, Dow Jones Market. His experience as a media professional includes keynote speaker on conferences, panelist, moderator, and motivational speaker. He is specialized in talking on subjects including mind training, breakthrough thinking, innovations, and leadership. He's worked with various global platforms, including BBC Media, Dubai Eye, Dubai TV, and various international broadcasting channels. He has a degree in economics and a master's from Harvard. Let us put together our hands to welcome Tariq Qureshi as well. Thank you.
Today is actually a wonderful privilege for me because I have known Sanjay for quite a while. And he's been a dear friend, but he's also been a great inspiration. And you know, we sit on the sidelines and look at some wonderful things happening, and I've seen Sanjay do a lot of things, amazing things quietly. And I find that very, very rewarding. So when today's session was going on and Naveen Bhai spoke to me, I said, this would be a real special privilege. Now, today the topic is about the journey is the reward. Now, I know it sounds a sort of a throwaway line. It's actually much, much more than that. It is very deep. It's very meaningful. It's an old Chinese Tao saying, and we'll delve deeper into that. So today, what we're going to do is three things, really. We're going to talk about our past journey and things that have brought us to today. Because I think those are learnings and experiences and memories and moments and time which I think is really quite special. So that's the first thing we'll do. Then the second is, I think we need to get into, while they're fixing the thing, we need to get into what we are going through today in our lives. The metamorphosis, the change, the reorganization, because all of you financial professionals are going through some of the biggest changes that you will ever face in your life. And that's happening today. And there's no greater man to address that than Sanjay himself. Then we'll go into the future, because that's my little wheelhouse. And it's really important, and I know you've heard me speak about the future many, many times, but it's important to get perspective from a very, very senior professional, and I'm going to reach out to the audience and engage how he sees the journey into the future, not just the past. So it's good to talk about the past, we will, but I think today we're going to be engaging in the future. Are we nearly there? I can keep talking for 30 minutes, it's not an issue. Sanjay's story, Sanjay's history is quite incredible. He was born in Vienna. He was and we're going to talk about that, Sanjay. He was a very naughty boy. You were a bit wild when you were young, weren't you?
I think I'm wild now as well.
He's wild now. Okay. And that naughtiness, how does that shape you in the future? In other words, you're exploring, you're finding, you're looking for new things. How is that shaping you? Because a lot of people here must be extremely well behaved because you're all chartered accountants. Is that right?
Well, I think accountancy is, by any standard, a very serious profession. And I still remember during the days when I was to decide as to what profession I would eventually take up, because being very average student in science and other disciplines, I thought that taking up commerce will be an easy way out. And once you become a commerce student, then the only option you have is you get into the chartered accountancy. Uh, didn't realize that it would be a very tough entry, managed it somehow, went through the turbulations of burning the midnight oil and got, qualified. And there I was, with a degree in hand, not doing much in India. And then I got this opportunity to work for PW. At that point in time, it was, I think, everyone sitting over here who is a chartered accountant probably knows that was the big five, which was the burning desire that she wanted to be enrolled with themselves, with those firms. And in India, at that point in time, there were very fractional firms which were operating under the franchise model. So my principal with whom I trained kind of said, if you don't get in PW, wait, qualify and I'll put you into PW. And that prophecy came true because I got an opportunity to work with PW in Oman, and I left the shores of the country on 7th of December 1987, and I'm still here.
You know, it's interesting you say that. A lot of super successful people were very average students, and I think they were using a lot of their creativity in developing themselves. When you were growing up, basically there were four professions, right?
Yeah.
Doctor, lawyer, accountant, and engineer, probably in that order.
Correct.
A lot of people here are parents. And these parents, when your kids come to you and sort of say, well, I don't want to be a doctor, I don't want to be an accountant, what are your experiences? What are you saying to your kids?
I'll probably narrate you some of my little family sort of history I have. So my youngest son came up to me and he says, Dad, accountancy is out of question. I'm not going to be an accountant because this is boring. He picked up a few traits of creativity and followed that trait, and he is now a successfully Masters of Architects working in Toronto. And his whole desire was that he wanted to pursue something more creative, more on the engineering sense. And here I was. If anybody gave me a book on biology or a chemistry or a physics, I probably could not even read beyond the first chapter because it was all alien to me. And here this kid was purely driven by the fact that he wanted to be about more creative in his life and profession. And I told him, I said, look, I will help you, I will support you, but then I cannot make your career because that is something which you have chosen and you should go through the path. My two other children are, believe it or not, in the business of movies. And you might think that how come this has happened? This has happened because their mom was, or rather is, an avid cinema goer. She's an encyclopedia. If you talk to her about any remotest of people who've acted in television or theater or films, she would have detailed knowledge about it. So that passion drove two of these kids. One is a professional architect, gave up that job or rather that profession, and said, I want to do something more different. So she started off being a film critic. And very soon she realized that she had a knack of picking up a good movie. And she's not into Bollywood movies. She's more into international cinema. So those of you who have seen Tithi, Lunchbox, movies on those sides are the movies which she kind of picked up and promoted across the globe. So she is what they call is a programmer in the film festival world. So globally she travels around, meeting all these personalities whom we see on the celluloid, working with them, and in fact, some of them come to her for advice. And just a little anecdote which happened. When PK was released, she went to Amir Khan and said, you know what? This movie will do phenomenally well in China. Why China? Because she had gone, and she still does, 2 festivals in China. And believe you not, if you go into and Google what happened with PK in China, it's fascinating. So these are the kind of things which is happening when you are pursuing a profession with passion. The second one is an assistant director. His latest movie, which he has done, and I'm sure all of you in the audience have seen, is Sanju. He's broken all records. All I'm trying to say over here, why I'm narrating my personal story over here, is that traditionally, I would have put my foot down and said, no way, you have to get into an engineer, doctor, medical, what. This is archaic thinking. We have to encourage our children to pursue their dreams, to pursue what they want to do. You and me have a moral, a social, and economic responsibility to support them. Allow them to be themselves. The diaspora of professionalism, especially from where we come in India, has exploded. There are programmers, there are data analysts, there are bloggers, there are people who follow food blogging. You get paid to be brought into a new facility to write about it. Try, if you have ever tried, go into a nice restaurant, and if you find something is missing or you've not been served well, or it's a very, very ordinary kind of meal you've had, just give them the idea that you're going to put this on social media, or you are going to put them in TripAdvisor. They will fall head over heel to try and help to please you. The world around us is changing, and if we do not change our thinking, I think we are going to find that progress is going to be not there, and we will be miserable. So it is important to encourage and promote and engage and accept change.
I think it's a nice little segue talking about change. One of my famous lines is, we need to change the way we think about change. Because in our minds, the word change means something, but the new world of change is completely and fundamentally different, because it's changing at a speed and a rate that we don't understand. So I think change is being redefined, so that's number one. In this sort of experience that you've had with your children, I mean, with this financial profession, how do you ask them, now that they have grown up a little bit, I would imagine since you're chartered accountants you have grown up a little bit, what steps do they take forward from today? Because once, obviously, it's easy to give passion to their kids, but how do they re-energize themselves? How do you re-energize yourself on a day-to-day basis? Because that's the future.
I think what we need to do is observe what our children like, what are they, perhaps, friends group is, what do they like? Do they like music, or they like to go outdoor and write about something? I mean, these are traits which you will only pick up through observing them and listening to them at times. And then I think we may even find it very strange that we may even have to do our own little bit of learning, own little bit of investigation as to what this profession involves or how I can help him. I remember I had a friend whose son at his very early age wanted to become a cricketer. Now, he had a passion for sport and he put in a lot of effort. He couldn't do that, but he went on to represent India on the basketball team. And all of this he was doing just to broaden his horizon, meeting people, going to different countries, interacting with different people from different strata. And today he is a good entrepreneur who is not, I would say, having major degrees anywhere from the likes of Harvard's and Wharton or Stanford. But I think the experience he gained whilst he was doing through his cricketing days or through the basketball days, and he represented India, had made him realize what are the values which he would inculcate and bring, and he's a very successful entrepreneur today. So all of these things, I think, what we got during our day was a foundation of learning. Okay, we have a little certificate to say, now you can go and write books and audit books and look at finances. But it never trains you to how would you manage a situation, which I found myself about 6-8 years ago when I was thrown in the deep end and saying, you know, can you help? This is all what you learn, your own gut feeling. And I would say the fact that the very first thing we should be willing to accept is that any new challenge we should be willing to accept. Because that's the first sign of change. Because if you're not going to come out of your comfort zone, let me tell you, we will all be just reduced to writing books. You do not want to be classified as an accountant. No, we have qualified, we were given a much larger platform to play in, and that was just the basic. This was just start. You can go beyond that, and you must. Later during the conversation, I'm sure Tariq is going to grill me through something else. I will tell you what happened and why it happened. But my humble request to you is, do not just leave things till something drastic happens. Take that first step, whether it is your own daily routine, your family, your children. They are always looking for support because change is not easy to manage. The only constant in our life today is change.
Thank you for that. Now that we are back on PowerPoint mode, so I'll share. I have 2 or 3 slides which I'd like to share with you to build context, because the way Sanjay and I are chatting, as you can see, we will engage a lot with you. This is your show, not ours. And so let me share a couple of fun slides. This was obviously the topic for today. This bright young man decided that he's going to write a book called The Journey is the Reward, and which he did. And moving forward from that, this is a video that you have seen. It should be operating. Anyway, this is the time lapse of the buy, and it it literally grows in front of you and it's created in front of you. And I wanted to show that because in this time lapse, and has everybody seen this time lapse? Yes, okay, good. So you can visualize that. A lot of the work that is being done in this time lapse is actually the work that Sanjay's company, Nakheel, has been doing. This is the future. And this is really, when we are talking about our journey, this is our journey into the future over the next 10, 12, 15 years. And this is something we're going to be engaging with today. This is another interesting slide, which I think it's important to remember that I've mentioned this before, but I think it's really important to keep re-emphasizing that. That's, according to this study, 75% of the companies in the S&P 500 will no longer exist in the year 2025. And 50% of the companies that are going to replace those 75% have not been born today. Therefore, you guys are going to be dealing with and engaging with a completely new set of companies. And this is creating disruption in every industry, disruption in every environment that you're in. So all of these, the top 3 have already been disrupted, the next 3 are being disrupted, and the last 3 are fighting back really, really hard. But they are being disrupted. So the questions I'm going to be asking Sanjay in a second is about that shift, that change and disruption in our business. And you as financial professionals, how do you lead that? This is another important one, that the 20th century companies, and how many people here, let's just get a little, they are working in companies that were set in the 20th century, not the 21st century, more than 20 years ago? How many people? Well, only 20% of these companies are going to survive going forward very shortly. 21st century company is going up. So we are going through what I call the transformation decade. Between now and 2030, this slide is going to happen. And it's going to happen really, really, really fast. So if you feel that you're in this solid 20th century company, guys, that might not actually last. So this is how you plan your life, don't you? As financial professionals. And that is our reality. Our reality is never what our plan is going to look like, particularly now in this world. So this is a nice segue back to you, Sanjay. What was your reality when you were offered this amazing job which nobody in the world would have taken other than yourself? At Nakheel, $16 billion in debt, the country is imploding, everything is happening, and you were offered this position. Why would you take something like that?
That was my only way to survive. Well, I think it's interesting. I took this as a great opportunity because in my personal life, I have a firm belief that every problem has a solution. It may not be the solution, but there is a solution. We may like it, we may not like it, but there is a solution. So when I was told that this is a situation, I really thought that could be something which will, further my career in the firm, because I was already a partner there, and these things really help when you are in a professional firm. So I went there, and I realized that I hadn't done much in the real estate industry. It was all very different from me, and the kind of chaos and the financial mess and complexity was not very easy. So I have a mentor with whom I used to chat. I still chat with him at times when I find myself kind of not progressing or kind of caught in a situation. So I think what I'm trying to tell you is that don't feel hesitant on taking any situation or on a position. Two, every one of us in this room has a mentor, whether it is a friend, whether it is our dad, whether it is a colleague, or whether it's somebody whom you have always wanting to meet and aspire. And I have been very fortunate that a lot of people on events like this have come up to me and said, can we call you in case we need some guidance and advice? And I said, if I can, I will definitely do that, but sure do call me. So we have the tools, but we need to start using those. So when I went in, I spent long hours. My wife used to kind of almost say to me, are you the senator and the janitor, because you go at 7 o'clock in the morning, which is when the office was opening, and I at times have come literally at 2 or 3 in the morning. And it wasn't that there was a lot that I was trying to do or was accomplishing, because there was a big team with plenty of advisors. But I was not feeling very comfortable. I said, I cannot go and sit amongst these advisors, these financiers, creditors, if I don't know the subject myself. How am I going to even respond or react if something is put on the table? So my thing was that I needed to be fully cognizant of the matter on hand. So long hours, hard work. Hard work is something which I think is irreplaceable. Forget if you believe that you have a magic wand called a computer, we will put in something and you press a button and everything will result. It is not going to happen. Because what is important is what you are putting in. That is the effort. So, yeah.
My key question on that one is, you were in the financial profession as a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers. You were in corporate finance. And then suddenly you had this position in real estate. How many people would accept this kind of shift? That's the first question. And the second close question is, what were the muscles that you had developed that made you ready for this moment?
Yeah, so I was fortunate because in being in corporate finance and being in the profession, I had worked with a number of industries, a number of people. So, you may have somebody who's absolutely passionate about the industry, but he doesn't know the financing side of it. So he's messed up. And then on the other side, you may have somebody who's absolutely gung-ho in finance and he can tell you exactly where every penny has gone, but his business idea and strategy is out of the window. He doesn't know what is happening. Typical, I'm not trying to insinuate anything over here, family businesses where they believe the family members are the members who are the champions of the industry and can take it forward. It's not necessarily always that. Succession planning. So I had a myriad of experiences, which was my muscle, my learning, which came into the play. And of course, as I said, talking to people, friends, and my mentor helped me understand the perspective. So I did a typical 80-20 situation. 80% of the problems were not very important, but they were on the list. But 20% of the problems which were very, very, I would say, significant and needed my time and energy was the one where I was focusing on, because as I said, I was not doing everything all by myself. There were a number of people. I had 6 sets of advisors, financial, accounting, legal, management, and the host of other people who were here. So whilst they're doing all of that, it's like, you know, you are in a perfect storm, you're the captain of the ship. If you start losing your perspective and your, I would say, balance, then the sailors on the ship are going to go all over the place. So remain steady, one thing at a time, look at the most important thing, and then focus on developing a strategy around it. So that was the ability to pick up that 80-20. The experience brings in all of these things. And I think sometimes we have to explore what I would say our gut. Somebody may come and tell you this is very important, but when you dwell into it and look around and say, well, I don't think that's important. But you should have the conviction to able to convince whomsoever you are interacting with or your domain to report to, be able to do that. And I think I was one of those lucky people who I could put my perspective and point across. And this is what I learned when I was taking up my accountancy training. I'm sure all of you have worked through a book by T.S. Grewal, the accounting book. Yes, I went to him for training right after my school. And I had sat in my entrance examination. And he told my dad, I'm just going to narrate the exact conversation in Punjabi. You will not understand, I'll translate to you in English as well. I'm sure some of you over here do understand Punjabi, because I was told there are a lot of people from North. Mr. Grewal said to my father, "Enu kyun le aaya the? Enu duniya dekhan de." So my dad looks at me and said, "Now, can you have a word with him? Enu jaan de college. Enu sab samajh aa jayegi." All he told my father was, "Why have you brought this kid to my office? Let him go and experience the real life. The real life will be when he is independent and in a college." Because all through the school life, I think we are all very protective. 8 hours or so, we are in school under the stewardship of our teachers and principals and everything. You come home, you're your parents, or you will have your tutors or anything else happening around you. So you're always living in a very sort of insulated environment. You're told what is good, what is bad, but you have to experience personally what is good, what is bad. And that's what college taught me. 3 years of college taught me a lot, many things, which otherwise I would have remained in a classroom environment if Mr. Grewal wouldn't have told my father, "Ki enu kyun le aaya the?" So please, it is very important that we must experience our lives, our situations, individually and independently. Your situation may be different from my situation. It need not necessarily be that you want to replicate that situation. No. When you are in your own element, looking at circumstances and working independently, that is where you will discover your real strengths. That is where you will discover where you need to work upon. I'm telling you, I was a very average student in math. Very average. I still remember my final results, no, intermediate results, they were all processed in a company called Escorts in India. And Escorts in India is in Faridabad. And we knew the people in the data center. We used to go and send numbers in and saying, please get us the results of this. So my number went in, and they only used to put F or P. My number came out saying F. I was so distraught. And I told myself, it must be mathematics which has let me down. To my surprise, when I went to the institute and the results were posted, I had passed. So maybe the guy who was writing P and F didn't recognize the difference between P and F. So it's sometimes, I think it's very important to recognize your own inner abilities and accept that and work with those unless you want to improve and make sure that you have the necessary tools and environment for improving that. We all, when I say improve, I think what the introductory speakers were alluding to the fact that you never stop learning. And as a very wise man once told me, the day you stop learning, the day you are dead.
So let us immerse the entire audience into Sanjay's experience when he took over the position at Nakheel. So just sort of work with us. He's just been given this amazing balance sheet, which had a big negative around it, around $16 billion. And all of you are bankers and lawyers and international companies that are sitting there. And we have Sanjay on this side, and perhaps you have a couple of advisors and so on. What do you say to a group in front of you, and how do you negotiate? What are the elements that you throw to them and sort of say, this is where we are, this is the journey we're in, this is where we are going? How do you engage that conversation? It's a tough one.
Okay, there are three very important things which I have implemented in my personal life. One, I told you about making sure that you know the subject, so learning. You have to know the subject, otherwise you are not able to speak, or you will not be able to put your point across. The second is learn to listen. You should not be preempting things and start chattering out, because that's a very, very dangerous thing to do. When you are in a corporate environment and you are faced with angry creditors, in my case, when I was growing up, it was the angry taxman, you never speak out of turn. You just listen. Because if you start thinking that you know all and you have run the figures and you have do everything, you might by mistake say something which they were not aware of, something they've never thought of, and that could be your nemesis. You could be caught on the wrong foot. And third, and the more important one, you must have the courage and conviction. If anybody gave me a book on biology or a chemistry or a physics, I probably could not even read beyond the first chapter because it was all alien to me. And here this kid was purely driven by the fact that he wanted to be about more creative in his life and profession. And I told him, I said, look, I will help you, I will support you, but then I cannot make your career because that is something which you have chosen. You should go through the path. My two other children are, believe it or not, in the business of movies. And you might think that how come this has happened? This has happened because their mom was, and rather is, an avid cinema goer. She's an encyclopedia. If you talk to her about any remotest of people who've acted in television or theater or films, she would have detailed knowledge about it. So that passion drove two of these kids. One is a professional architect, gave up that job of, or rather that profession, and said, I want to do something more different. So she started off being a film critic. And very soon she realized that she had a knack of picking up a good movie. And she's not into Bollywood movies, she's more into international cinema. So those of you who have seen Tithi, uh, Lunchbox, movies on those sides are the movies which she kind of picked up and promoted across the globe. So she is what they call is a programmer in the film festival world. So globally she travels around meeting all these personalities whom we see on the celluloid, working with them, and in fact some of them come to her for advice. And just a little anecdote which happened. When PK was released, she went to Amir Khan and said, you know what, this movie will do phenomenally well in China. Why China? Because she had gone, and she still does, 2 festivals in China. And believe you or not, if you go into and Google what happened with PK in China, it's fascinating. So these are the kind of things which is happening when you are pursuing a profession with passion. The second one is an assistant director. His latest movie which he has done, and I'm sure all of you in the audience have seen, is Sanju. He's broken all records. All I'm trying to say over here, why I'm narrating my personal story over here, is that traditionally, I would have put my foot down and said, no way, you have to get into an engineer, doctor, medical, what. This is archaic thinking. We have to encourage our children to pursue their dreams, to pursue what they want to do. You and me have a moral, a social, and economic responsibility to support them. Allow them to be themselves. The diaspora of professionalism, especially from where we come in India, has exploded. There are programmers, there are data analysts, there are bloggers, there are people who follow food blogging. You get paid to be brought into a new facility to write about it. Try, if you have ever tried, go into a nice restaurant, and if you find something is missing, or you've not been served well, or it's a very, very ordinary, kind of meal you've had, just give them the idea that you're going to put this on social media, or you are going to put them in TripAdvisor. They will fall head over heel to try and help to please you. The world around us is changing, and if we do not change our thinking, I think we are going to find that progress is going to be not there, and we will be miserable. So it is important to encourage and promote and engage and accept change.
I think it's a nice little segue talking about change. One of my famous lines is, we need to change the way we think about change. Because in our minds, the word change means something, but the new world of change is completely and fundamentally different, because it's changing at a speed and a rate that we don't understand. So I think change is being redefined, so that's number one. In this sort of experience that you've had with your children, I mean, with this financial profession, how do you ask them, now that they have grown up a little bit, I would imagine since you're chartered accountants you have grown up a little bit, what steps do they take forward from today? Because once, obviously, it's easy to give passion to their kids, but how do they re-energize themselves? How do you re-energize yourself on a day-to-day basis? Because that's the future.
I think what we need to do is observe what our children like, what are they, perhaps, friends group is, what do they like? Do they like music, or they like to go outdoor and write about something? I mean, these are traits which you will only pick up through observing them and listening to them at times. And then I think we may even find it very strange that we may even have to do our own little bit of learning, own little bit of investigation as to what this profession involves, or how I can help him. I remember I had a friend whose son, at his very early age, wanted to become a cricketer. Now, he had a passion for sport, and he put in a lot of effort. He couldn't do that, but he went on to represent India on the basketball team. And all of this he was doing just to broaden his horizon, meeting people, going to different countries, interacting with different people from different strata. And today he is a good entrepreneur who is not, I would say, having major degrees anywhere from the likes of Harvard's and Wharton or Stanford. But I think the experience he gained whilst he was doing through his cricketing days or through the basketball days, and he represented India, had made him realize what are the values which he would inculcate and bring, and he's a very successful entrepreneur today. So all of these things, I think, what we got during our day was a foundation of learning. Okay, we have a little certificate to say, now you can go and write books and audit books and look at finances. But it never trains you to how would you manage a situation, which I found myself about 6-8 years ago when I was thrown in the deep end and saying, can you help? This is all what you learn, your own gut feeling. And I would say the fact that the very first thing we should be willing to accept is that any new challenge we should be willing to accept. Because that's the first sign of change. Because if you're not going to come out of your comfort zone, let me tell you, we will all be just reduced to writing books. You do not want to be classified as an accountant. No, we have qualified, we were given a much larger platform to play in, and that was just the basic, this was just start. You can go beyond that, and you must. Later during the conversation, I'm sure Tariq is going to grill me through something else. I will tell you what happened and why it happened. But my humble request to you is, do not just leave things till something drastic happens. Take that first step, whether it is your own daily routine, your family, your children. They are always looking for support because change is not easy to manage. The only constant in our life today is change.
Thank you for that. Now that we are back on PowerPoint mode, so I'll share. I have 2 or 3 slides which I'd like to share with you to build context, because the way Sanjay and I are chatting, as you can see, we will engage a lot with you. This is your show, not ours. And so let me share a couple of fun slides. This was obviously the topic for today. This bright young man decided that he's going to write a book called The Journey is the Reward, and which he did. And moving forward from that, this is a video that you have seen. It should be operating. Anyway, this is the time-lapse of the Dubai, and it literally grows in front of you and is created in front of you. And I wanted to show that because in this time-lapse, and has everybody seen this time-lapse? Yes? Okay, good. So you can visualize that. A lot of the work that is being done in this time-lapse is actually the work that Sanjay's company, Nakheel, has been doing. This is the future. And this is really, when we are talking about our journey, this is our journey into the future over the next 10, 12, 15 years. And this is something we're going to be engaging with today. This is another interesting slide, which I think it's important to remember that I've mentioned this before, but I think it's really important to keep re-emphasizing that. That's, according to this study, 75% of the companies in the S&P 500 will no longer exist in the year 2025. And 50% of the companies that are going to replace those 75% have not been born today. Therefore, you guys are going to be dealing with and engaging with a completely new set of companies. And this is creating disruption in every industry, disruption in every environment that you're in. So all of these, the top 3 have already been disrupted, the next 3 are being disrupted, and the last 3 are fighting back really, really hard, but they are being disrupted. So the questions I'm going to be asking Sanjay in a second is about that shift, that change and disruption in our business. And you as financial professionals, how do you lead that? This is another important one, that the 20th century companies, and how many people here, let's just get a little, they are working in companies that were set in the 20th century, not the 21st century, more than 20 years ago? How many people? Well, only, only 20% of these companies are going to survive going forward, very shortly. 21st century companies are going up. So we are going through what I call the transformation decade. Between now and 2030, this slide is going to happen. And it's going to happen really, really, really fast. So if you feel that you're in this solid 20th century company, guys, that might not actually last. So this is how you plan your life, don't you? As financial professionals. And that is our reality. Our reality is never what our plan is going to look like, particularly now in this world. So this is a nice segue back to you, Sanjay. What was your reality when you were offered this amazing job, which nobody in the world would have taken other than yourself? At Nakheel, $16 billion in debt, the country is imploding, everything is happening, and you were offered this position. Why would you take something like that?
That was my only way to survive. Well, I think it's interesting. I took this as a great opportunity because in my personal life, I have a firm belief that every problem has a solution. It may not be the solution, but there is a solution. We may like it, we may not like it, but there is a solution. So when I was told that this is a situation, I really thought that this could be something which will, further my career in the firm, because I was already a partner there, and these things really help when you are in a professional firm. So I went there, and I realized that I hadn't done much in the real estate industry. It was all very different from me, and the kind of chaos and the financial mess and complexity was not very easy. So I have a mentor with whom I used to chat. I still chat with him at times when I find myself kind of not progressing or kind of caught in a situation. So I think what I'm trying to tell you is that don't feel hesitant on taking any situation or on a position. Two, every one of us in this room has a mentor, whether it is our friend, whether it is our dad, whether it is a colleague, or whether it's somebody whom you have always wanting to meet and aspire. And I have been very fortunate that a lot of people on events like this have come up to me and said, can we call you in case we need some guidance and advice? And I said, if I can, I will definitely do that, but sure do call me. So we have the tools, but we need to start using those. So when I went in, I spent long hours. My wife used to kind of almost say to me, are you the senator and the janitor? Because you go at 7 o'clock in the morning, which is when the office was opening. And I, at times, have come literally at 2 or 3 in the morning. And it wasn't that there was a lot that I was trying to do or was accomplishing, because there was a big team, plenty of advisors. But I was not feeling very comfortable. I said, I cannot go and sit amongst these advisors, these financiers, creditors, if I don't know the subject myself. How am I going to even respond or react to if something is put on the table? So my thing was that I needed to be fully cognizant of the matter on hand. So long hours, hard work. Hard work is something which I think is irreplaceable. Forget if you believe that you have a magic wand called a computer. We will put in something and you press a button and everything will be resolved. It is not going to happen. Because what is important is what you are putting in. That is the effort. So, yeah.
My key question on that one is, you were in the financial profession as a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers. You were in corporate finance. And then suddenly you had this position in real estate. How many people would accept this kind of shift? That's the first question. And the second close question is, what were the muscles that you had developed that made you ready for this moment?
Yeah, so I was fortunate because in being in corporate finance and being in the profession, I had worked with a number of industries, a number of people. So, you know, you may have somebody who's absolutely passionate about the industry, but he doesn't know the financing side of it. So he's messed up. And then on the other side, you may have somebody who's absolutely gung-ho on finance and he can tell you exactly where every penny has gone, but his business idea and strategy is out of the window. He doesn't know what is happening. Typical, I'm not trying to insinuate anything over here, family businesses where they believe the family members are the members who are the champions of the industry and can take it forward. It's not necessarily always that. Succession planning. So I had a myriad of experiences, which was my muscle, my learning, which came into the play. And of course, as I said, talking to people, friends, and my mentor helped me understand the perspective. So I did a typical 80-20 situation. 80% of the problems were not very important, but they were on the list. But 20% of the problems which were very, very, I would say, significant and needed my time and energy was the one where I was focusing on because, as I said, I was not doing everything all by myself. There were a number of people. I had 6 sets of advisors, financial, accounting, legal, management, and the host of other people who were here. So whilst they're doing all of that, it's like, you know, you are in a perfect storm, you're the captain of the ship. If you start losing your perspective and your, I would say, balance, then the sailors on the ship are going to go all over the place. So remain steady, one thing at a time, look at the most important thing, and then focus on developing a strategy around it. So that was the ability to pick up that 80-20. The experience brings in all of these things. And I think sometimes we have to explore what I would say our gut. Somebody may come and tell you this is very important, but when you dwell into it and look around and say, well, I don't think that's important. But you should have the conviction to able to convince whomsoever you are interacting with or your domain to report to, be able to do that. And I think I was one of those lucky people who I could put my perspective and point across. And this is what I learned when I was taking up my accountancy training. I'm sure all of you have worked through a book by T.S. Grewal, the accounting book. Yes, I went to him for training right after my school. And I had sat in my entrance examination. And he told my dad, I'm just going to narrate the exact conversation in Punjabi. You will not understand, I'll translate to you in English as well. I'm sure some of you over here do understand Punjabi because I was told there are a lot of people from North. Mr. Grewal said to my father, "Enu kyun le aaya the? Enu duniya dekhan de." So my dad looks at me and said, "Now, can you have a word with him?" Enu jaan de college. Enu sab samajh aa jayegi. All he told my father was, "Why have you brought this kid to my office? Let him go and experience the real life. The real life will be when he is independent and in a college." Because all through the school life, I think we are all very protective. 8 hours or so, we are in school under the stewardship of our teachers and principals and everything. You come home, you're your parents, or you will have your tutors or anything else happening around you. So you're always living in a very sort of insulated environment. You're told what is good, what is bad, but you have to experience personally what is good, what is bad. And that's what college taught me. 3 years of college taught me a lot, many things, which otherwise I would have remained in a classroom environment if Mr. Grewal wouldn't have told my father, "Enu kyun le aaya the?" So please, it is very important that we must experience our lives, our situations, individually and independently. Your situation may be different from my situation. It need not necessarily be that you want to replicate that situation. No. When you are in your own element, looking at circumstances and working independently, that is where you will discover your real strengths. That is where you will discover where you need to work upon. I'm telling you, I was a very average student in math, very average. I still remember my final results, no, intermediate results. They were all processed in a company called Escorts in India. And Escorts in India is in Faridabad. And we knew the people in the data center. We used to go and send numbers in and saying, please get us the results of this. So my number went in, and they only used to put F or P. My number came out saying F. I was so distraught. And I told myself, it must be mathematics which has let me down. To my surprise, when I went to the institute and the results were posted, I had passed. So maybe the guy who was writing P and F didn't recognize the difference between P and F. So it's sometimes, I think it's very important to recognize your own inner abilities and accept that and work with those unless you want to improve, and make sure that you have the necessary tools and environment for improving that. We all, when I say improve, I think what the introductory speakers were alluding to the fact that you never stop learning. And as a very wise man once told me, the day you stop learning, the day you are dead.
So let us immerse the entire audience into Sanjay's experience when he took over the position at Nakheel. So just sort of work with us. He's just been given this amazing balance sheet, which had a big negative around it, around $16 billion. And all of you are bankers and lawyers in international companies that are sitting there. And we have Sanjay on this side, and perhaps you have a couple of advisors and so on. What do you say to a group in front of you, and how do you negotiate? What are the elements that you throw to them and sort of say, this is where we are, this is the journey we're in, this is where we are going? How do you engage that conversation? It's a tough one.
Okay, there are three very important things which I have implemented in my personal life. One, I told you about making sure that you know the subject, so learning. You have to know the subject, otherwise you are not able to speak, or you will not be able to put your point across. The second is learn to listen. You should not be preempting things and start chattering out, because that's a very, very dangerous thing to do. When you are in a corporate environment and you are faced with angry creditors, in my case, when I was growing up, it was the angry taxman, you never speak out of turn. You just listen. Because if you start thinking that you know all and you have run the figures and you have do everything, you might by mistake say something which they were not aware of, something they've never thought of, and that could be your nemesis. You could be caught on the wrong foot. And third, and the more important one, you must have the courage and conviction. I always reminded them that that is what you are looking for. The rest is all periphery. So let's not focus on the periphery. Let's focus on what you want. They want cash flows. So as long as you're able to give those and give them the assurance that you will be able to deliver them on that, they're fine with it.
Because the banks are asking you for audited accounts and audited
Correct.
statements.
They said, oh, we need audited accounts and blah, 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 blah. I said, by any stretch of imagination, the audited accounts, the first 5 or 6 pages of the audited accounts are what you can probably understand. The rest of it is theoretical manifestation of how these numbers have been brought on the first 5 pages. And none of you are going to read them, analyze them. You're just going to put them in a file saying, one box tick, done. I also know how people analyze financial statements in banks because, again, I have done a lot of bank audits. All they do is they will put a guy, they have a spreadsheet, they'll punch in the numbers, and boom, they will get you the ratios and all the other qualities. Nobody, I can tell you, if there are some bankers without insinuating anything to them, you guys do not read the notes to the accounts, which are the most important knowledge on the financial statements. When you're equipped with these things, you're able to talk to them about the relevance, about the subject, about the topic. The only thing I didn't do was wanting to find out and saying, this is what I want to do, this is what I will tell you. No, listen to them.
So let's work with this. I mean, you are representing banks, you're chartered accountants, you're probably CFOs and so on. Now, we're actually happy here. Are you happy here, Sanjay?
Yeah.
You don't want to go there, right? I don't want to go there.
No, it's okay. It's pretty comforting.
It's pretty comfortable, so we're okay. Thanks. So you are representing HSBC and Standard Chartered and all of these kinds of institutions, and you have been given a very, very clear mandate to work on something. He is there with his coalition of people, and I think we need to ask how he built his coalition around him, his muscles, to be able to deal and negotiate with this thing. So the power of negotiation is, I think, one of the key things that comes out of this. You spoke about courage, and you spoke about things that are absolutely critical and important. So in this conversation, you as CFO of a bank, you as a CEO of an institution that is in trouble and it's being addressed, how do we bridge this? What are the things that we do here? And what are the kinds of advice that you can give to people because in current conditions, they're going to be seeing this every single day of their lives.
Yeah, I think first of all, you must be very comfortable in the position you are. You should be able to convince them that you are the real thing, and you're not giving them any distant dreams. So when I was talking about taking the example of the financial audited accounts, all I was telling them that, okay, look, I can give you this, but this is of no help. What you need is the cash flows. I will sincerely prepare a report for you, which you can verify, check, and be done on a regular basis, which will give you the comfort. Now, if I understand the banker's mindset, the CFO of the bank or whosoever is coming and working with us, I become his friend rather than his foe. So I have to take him into confidence and work with him. So this camaraderie in adversity has to be the only way to find a solution to a sticky problem. You cannot just say, this is my position and this is your position. If you come to that digging your heels, you probably are going to hit each other blue in the face, and you won't find a solution. As I said earlier, my philosophy in life has been, there is always a solution to a problem we have. It may not be the solution, but there is a solution, and that is what we should be working towards. So talking to the banks, I have lots of friends in the banking industry now, and a lot of them in confidence told me that when you first came to the negotiation table, we thought you were just trying to be a big bully, but then we realized that you were trying to protect your owners and at the same time trying to reach across a point where the banks would start working towards it. So that level of comfort has to be brought in. Because if you say this is the only way I am going to do it, he's probably going to get very aggressive as well, because any aggression can be met with the same aggression, this thing. So some of the laws of physics may not be always true, where every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction can, in this situation, be a slightly different ballgame.
In building this trust with the bankers and with the institutional investors, one of the things you did was you declared a loss and you revalued your assets to start becoming more real and more realistic about what's going on.
Correct. So this is what I was trying to say to them. As long as you are telling them that you are the real thing, they will start working with you. So it was well known that we were on a financially in a very difficult situation. I had to do a lot of convincing in the boardroom because everybody thought, how is this possible? And everybody, yeah, this is government of Dubai. I said, yeah, but you have done all of this. No, if you do not own up, if you go to a doctor and you have a headache and you say, oh, I've got a pain in my toe, what is he going to give you? Because you are telling him something which he will only prescribe a medicine for that. So what's wrong in accepting the fact that, look, I have a headache? Now, I had this lot of convincing to be done. But at the end of the day, I think, I still remember the day we released the results, I got a phone call from a guy who was reporting on us in JP Morgan. He said to me, this is the most beneficial outcome of you being there, that they have accepted that there is a problem. Unless and until we are not going to accept the truth, the real thing will never work. Never. Never. We have to accept, we have to have the courage, because once we know what's the real thing, then the road to finding a solution.
You hit the nail on the head with the word courage, which I was going to. Modern leadership and modern financial leadership in this environment of change and transformation requires vision and all of those things. But more importantly, it requires courage. Courage to be able to look at that and say, oh my God, this is what we have to do. How do we build these muscles of courage? What do we need to have as tools? What is our toolkit to support these ladies and gentlemen have the courage to go forward?
The way I have been able to implement this is by empowering people. At the position where some of us are sitting, we don't do the work all by ourselves. We have a number of colleagues and staff members who are doing that. And if you think that you are going to be pushing down everything and saying, you have to do this, and this is the only way, then I think you are not courageous enough. I had a situation where, remember, just a scenario painting in front of you, 4,000 people left overnight, reducing the company to about 1,000. There were files all over the place, and nobody knew what was happening. The financial systems had all kind of been unattended. And I was to rebuild a reporting system. So I had a small team, we started talking about it. I gave them my thought process as saying, this is what I think we should be doing and this is how we should be doing it. And there was one guy who raised his hand up and he said, I don't think so that we will achieve the kind of results you want, but I get your drift. Leave it with me for 3 days and I will come with a solution. Honest to God, in 3 days' time, I had a report on my desk. We went through everything, and till date, we deploy that as a tool because that was developed by somebody who took the initiative and made sure that what we or I wanted from or the firm or the board wanted was delivered. To me, that is courage. The courage to empower people to deliver. And at the end of the day, if we do not start making sure that we become a tool for learning for others, we will never progress. We will remain where we are. I've learned so much from this episode when I was sitting with the gentleman, that today if I have a variation from a budget, we can pinpoint where the variation is, why the variation. And that then helps us to navigate, and manage our business. It's important that we understand the relevance of some of these things. For courage is not just standing and pushing, let's say, a heavy this thing. Courage is the ability to ensure that your decisions are the decisions which you will stand by. And perhaps I have made many mistakes. Courage is to own up for those mistakes. No one is perfect over here. I am not, you are not. We all have made mistakes. But does it mean that we are lesser people, or we are lesser intelligent, or we do not know what to do and how to do? I don't think so. My sort of philosophy over the years has been stop judging yourself. Remain very focused. It is what it is. Some of us have the ability, some of us do not have the ability. But the abilities which you have should be the ones you should be always working on. The ones which you want to acquire, retool yourself. And by the way, whether we are retooling ourselves or not, I think the environment around us is forcing us to retool. The point you were making about 2030.
We've been requested to go back on stage, so we'll certainly do that. We have a few more slides. I'll ask Sanjay questions through those slides, and then we'll open up to a Q&A in about 5 minutes or so. Okay, and then we'll, Naveen is impatiently waiting there, so we need to work on that. This is his amazing work. I mean, I wanted to talk about Nakhil. We have spoken about negotiations. He's been through that. We've spoken about unlocking challenges. We've spoken through that. This is another one, which is a digital tsunami, Sanjay. If you look at this, this image, this is metaphorically an image for me of how financial professionals will be surfing the data tsunami that's coming, the digital tsunami that's coming in. Because I'd like to now move forward into the future a little bit. Is this how you see it? You know, you are like a surfer dude who's on top of a wave and you have to manage all that data. Or are you the little guy who's running away?
I think, if you ask me very honestly, this is a very opportune time for finance professionals, CFOs, to take charge. And I'll tell you in a minute how I think about this. Because today everybody is doing different things. We already have a skill set of, I would say, reporting and disclosure under IFRS and all. That's a give. So that's not something which we want to, fly our flags high on. What we have as finance professionals is the ability to pierce through various scenarios and data and give businesses a strategic direction. So with digital tsunami, deep learning, some of your routine jobs and all will be made redundant. You don't need to do that because some computer is doing it. But what is more important is to control the data which is being fed in to give you the routine numbers and this thing. And if you are able to apply yourself as to what the business is doing in different verticals and help put a strategy through and saying, well, this is the customers. For example, you have the power to know which customer segment is buying what. So it's not just about reporting that, but it is going behind that and looking at the product lines. So if you have 10 product lines, 3 are doing phenomenally well, and the rest 7 are not doing well, you probably will be able to steer the management and say, you know what, increase these 3 lines and make 2 or 3 redundant so that we can bring in more economic benefit and financial health to the business. We cannot just be sitting in our comfort zones and doing what I would call number crunching. That will be done whether we are there or not. I think we have the power as financial analysts to be able to contribute more positively, because once you start understanding the business better, you will be able to find solutions within the financial reporting guidelines which are given to us under IFRS. And I have implemented this in situations where we were changing the measurement and disclosure requirements. And I sat down with the auditors and said, okay, help me explain what are the various points. And then once you are equipped with that knowledge, as finance people, we should not just saying, okay, this is the only way we can do it. No. Go behind, learn about your business because you have that ability. Translate that learning for the benefit of the company. The strategy will change. And so digital tsunami, I think, is a blessing in disguise for us.
My thoughts on this one is that financial professionals move away from the number crunching to becoming trusted advisors. They become the people who help us with compliance and ethics and managing that process, which really leads me to the next question is that there are a lot of people here, there are a lot of young chartered accountants here. So let's say you're 35, 40 years old and you're projecting yourself into the year 2030, 10, 12 years from now. You won't even be 50. What's your advice in terms of the journey and the learning that need to have in the next 10 or 12 years? You've alluded to some already, but what are these people, what are the 2, 3 things that they need to do tomorrow morning to start on this journey?
I think you have to put in a little bit more initiative in knowing about the business beyond its balance sheet and P&L. Talk to people in the customer section. Talk to people in the production if you're in the manufacturing. Learn, and then that is where you will start finding, and perhaps even for that matter, speak to your chief data officer or information officer who's processing the masses of data to understand what is happening and where it is happening, because you need to look at these things and be able to improve your utility in the company.
How about moving outside the company? So there you're sitting in a box, you're learning within the company and you're learning more about the company and about the business. What about learning completely different disciplines? So a scientist learns about art, an accountant learns about psychology or behavior or something like that. Because as we are evolving in this world now, we need different types of disciplines rather than a little bit more about our own business. Wouldn't you say so?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, some of the things which are happening in a company like Nakheel, which is a very, very large company, it doesn't come to me through my reportees or management reports. It's talking to people who probably are serving tea and coffee to their bosses. And I do that out of habit. Because sometimes what happens is when you are in a position and at that level, everybody aspires to reach out to you. So my kind of guy is a guy who will even go and sit with my office boy and say, what happened? How did you spend your Eid? What did you do? Acha, you went there in that office. What's going on over there? And not snooping, just trying to understand what's happening, where it is going. I'm just giving you simple examples. If you really want to know what is happening, let's say in the retail industry or anything, just go down to the shopkeeper, the people on the counter, they will tell you how many people have visited, what they are generally buying, what they're not buying. Talk to the taxi drivers. I do often. They tell me the pulse of what is happening, which hotel is very, getting busier, or which club or which restaurants. These are small things which you can bring into your own real life situation.
I think we'll open up the next 10 minutes, which is our conclusion, to the audience and start asking some questions from the floor. So you heard about Sanjay's past, you heard about the things he went through, and some of his views about the future. So, any questions? Burning question? Yes, please. Oh yeah, please.
Morning, Sanjay.
Morning.
First of all, congratulations on your amazing journey. I have 2 questions for you. One, as a CEO, okay, CFOs, we are quite like obsessed with generating cash for the business. What are your tips as the CEO of an organization to generate more cash like you have already done? And second, as a successful professional, do you believe that is it good to give back to the society either through the corporate or as an individual? And how do you do that? Thank you.
Thank you. How do you make more cash? Printing money?
That's one way of doing it. This is what the governments are doing across the economies today. Look, I think you need to know your business well. And once you know your business well, you know where most of this cash is generated or where some of the areas which are lagging behind, and then you apply yourself in doing that. 2 or 3 ways you can do it, depends upon the industry. If there is something which is generating good amount of cash, then you ramp up that kind of activity to generate more cash. Or you see that you want to do a value add to what you're doing, and there is an opportunity for you to bring in an incremental cash by doing that value add, then you do that. So there is no textbook formula for it. I think one has to go and study the business, and perhaps, as Tarak alluded to the fact, look outside your business as well and see what's happening around you, and you may find something very interesting by observing that, hey, this can be dovetailed into my business. And this is, so it's no more just inward-looking environment here. I think it's more about what's around you, which you can bring in and generate more cash. What I give back to the society, I think I'm happy to. I've spoken on a number of events. People come and want to share or listen to me and my experiences. There are a number of individuals who have approached me. I do my way of giving back to the society is helping whosoever crossed my path, and if I'm in a position to help, and I always do help. So I think it's a very individual way of doing it, but I'm not doing it under the banner of any organization or on a charity event or any of that stuff. I just do it as a person.
Thank you. Another question? Sorry.
Sanjay, my question is, it's one thing to negotiate with the creditors, the bankers, when you walked into the situation which you did. But how is it that, you handle the owners who have built the business in a certain manner, and now you're trying to get them to buy into the idea that they have to clean up their balance sheets, maybe do something different than they were doing earlier?
So I think I touched upon this when I talked about the courage and the conviction. So when I first went into that boardroom saying this is what we will have to do, declare a loss of $20 billion, everybody called me that I didn't know what I was saying. I had to rationalize with them, explain them why we were doing that. So I think when you're kind of a situation, you probably have to explain them the pros and cons of what you are doing and why it is required. And as I said, sometimes it's to have a healthy body, you need to know where it is suffering the most and address that suffering so that you bring back the business to health. Otherwise, you will be in denial. And if you are in denial, nobody can help you.
Yes, sir. That was a question there, yes.
Good morning, and thank you, Sanjay, for enriching us by sharing your experience. I would request you if you can dwell a little bit more on your journey from a finance professional to the CEO. What change you had to go through, and what you think is necessary for a finance person to go through to make a successful CEO? Learning about the technicalities of the business. I mean, you said you didn't know anything about real estate. So, we say we know the technical side of the business between IFRS, tax, and this and that. But if you have to learn the other business technicalities, you may have to, leave some of these things. And which is, generally we are very afraid. We want to keep hold of these things. We want to be on top of IFRS, tax, what is happening on our field. How do you, and can you do both simultaneously, or you have to leave this, focus more on that side? How important it is to know the business inside out, technicalities, and how, what portion of your time has gone into that?
Okay. Look, I think this is something which should come from within you as a person. There is no formula for success. Like Naveen is pursuing education at this age and stature, somebody might say, why are you doing this?
Actually, they do all the time.
But speaking on his behalf, I would say this is coming from within. His quest for knowledge and learning is insatiable. He likes to do that. So that is what you want to do. If you are only going, if you feel that you want to move on and be a little bit more complete person and move to the, let's say, the higher level, you have to invest time. You have to invest your own resources, because what you know is already know. You have to move out of your comfort zone. So the point I'm trying to make through is that you continue to evolve and learn. Learning necessarily need not be sitting in exams or reading MBA books or becoming an MBA and all. I think those are just foundations for you to acquire knowledge. But to implement that, it's an initiative which you have to take. I told you about me going there from 7 o'clock in the morning to coming 2, 3 in the morning. Why would I do that? Because I did not want to fail. The fear of failure is something which made me go and learn. Now, I was doing it because I wanted to make sure that when I go and meet with the various members of the advisors team, I can do this. The very fact that I was doing this caught somebody's eye and said, this guy is like working as if there's no tomorrow. So they trusted me. So when we finished, this is for real, I'm telling you. When he finished, I went into my chairman's office. I said, sir, I have not done my job. Thank you very much. I shall be reporting back to my office. He said, where are you going? I said, I have to go. I've got a day job. I work for PwC. I don't work for Nikhil. I am a secondee. He says, wait. And as the rest is history. Because he saw me what I was doing. So don't do things with the expectation that that will happen. Do it because it is what you want.
The slide I put up is, it is time to think differently, and I wanted to talk about some life journeys. And I had this is another example of being stuck in the mud, literally. But what I wanted to do was to talk about Elon Musk for a second, and it's a nice segue from this gentleman's question. Elon Musk is dominating 3 industries in the world today: the automobile industry, the solar industry, and the space industry. Okay? He's dominating these 3 areas. He started as a geeky programmer. He read lots and lots of books. He consumed the whole encyclopedia. He ran out of books to read. He is not an expert in any of those 3 areas that he is dominating in the world today. So this is why I had this thing, is that we have to think differently, disrupt, and that is all he's doing. So he has become an expert in disruption, as opposed to expert in the solar industry or the automobile industry or any of that. And that, to me, is one of my learnings from this experience. What are your thoughts, sir? Because his journey has been all over the place, from financial to this or that. So how do we bring that learning into our lives?
See, it's very personal. There's only one Elon Musk, only one guy.
No, hundreds of them.
No, but he's the one who's done it, because he's applying himself. He's going beyond the comfort zone he is, and he's testing the untested. So whether it is automobile or space or technology, he has had the ability to say, well, you know what, I'm going to do this. If I fail, I'm going to double my effort and do this again. So there is no success served to you on a platter. The point I was trying to pick up from what Tariq mentioned is, read books. I've started to read books because a friend of mine introduced me to this habit of saying, you have plenty of time, you're a boss, and this and that and the other. Start reading some books. And I think that helps you, again, to broaden your horizon. as finance professionals, I think we are so bored reading IFRSs and all the other textbooks and all of that we have to do. And I believe now there is a requirement to put in the next number of hours in training and this and that and the other to stay relevant in the profession. But I think just read books. That will broaden your horizon and may inspire you to do things which you may never ever thought of. So that's another avenue of how you can kind of perhaps get out of the logjam of numbers and reporting and accounting and your own, sort of daily routine by just doing things, or maybe play a sport and just go out. This is what I'm trying to say is channelizing your energies and resources and being a little more observant than you have been would help you to pick up the challenges of tomorrow.
He's another one of my favorites, and I'm sure I'll be challenging Naveen on this one. He said knowledge is more important, imagination is more important than knowledge. And that's another important learning for me, is that if we are curious and imaginative, that is an amazingly more powerful skill than just knowledge. And I think that was just one of my learnings that I wanted to share. Do you guys want to have a laugh? Some people have seen this before, but I think I love to play this particular one. Will the video work? Will the video work?
That's the laugh.
That's the laugh, okay. So we have reached this amazing balance between fear and hope, between these two elements in there. And if you, he's going to play the video. And this is what was, there was a grandmother who was put in a Tesla car for the very first time. And as she was put in the Tesla car, see what happens to her. And I wanted to share this because I wanted you to understand the kind of fear people go through because of change and a shift in technology. Can we play the video, please? An old grandmother. Check it out. Technology is a challenge today. Oh, they're still putting in feeds in there. While they're doing that, is there another question? Yes, sir, quickly, and then we can start wrapping up.
Hi, my name is Deepak. My question is again something related to what Tariq shared, Mr. Sanjay and Manish. How you give importance to inside-out approach as compared to outside-in? Most of the time people follow outside-in.
Your voice is echoing.
Outside-in approach, like what is happening outside us, we collect information about economy, about what's happening around us, media, that decides our, that influence our thoughts, feelings, action, and then results. Instead of that, what is happening inside us, what we want, desire-driven, instead of fear-driven. How important that?
I think if you have a desire,
Yep.
you will always find a way to do something to address that desire.
Exactly.
Whether it is something around you, whether it's something distant from you, or whether there's something absolutely new to you. As long as you are true to your own self, as I said, don't do things with the expectation that you are going to go through this and you will become, let's say, the group general manager or group CEO and all of that. All that you have to do is, if you want to acquire knowledge, and if you want to learn more about your profession, your business, or anything, then you got to make that effort. Nobody is going to, there is no textbook, sir. There is no, when I was growing up and I was doing my, just to share this with you, I was surrounded by people from certain part of India where they were doing 2 or 3 qualifications simultaneously. During the days when I was doing my accountancy, ICAI, CS, everybody used to follow that. This 3 course was like a standard menu. And everybody used to say, why are you not doing it? I said, I don't need to. This one itself is so difficult to go through. I am not going to be in a position to do this, and I don't have the ability, perhaps. And I didn't. Is that saying that what they were doing was wrong? No. Yeah. It was driven by their a desire to have these three qualifications because everybody wanted to become, it opens up more avenues for employment at that point in time because you could become a company secretary or just an accountant or a chartered accountant and all of that. But each one to himself. So as I said, you know, we are all very unique individuals. Let's not compare ourselves to others and continue what gives you the pleasure of what you're doing. I didn't go and do things with the expectation that I will be perched over here. No. I went there because I had to prove that as an advisor, I'm able to deliver. That was the only goal I had in mind when I was doing that assignment.
Back to the video. This is one of my favorite videos because it connects with our, with us very, very closely. And it's this balance that we have between fear and hope. And with this grandmother, I want you to feel her pain. Go. Work. It won't work. Go.
I'm scared. Oh, this car is coming. Oh, this car is. Bill, just put me back for me control it. Oh, dear Jesus. I could never. Oh, where's it going? God damn, Bill. Oh, my God. Oh, this is so scary. Oh, Jesus, this is my first day out, and I'm about to die.
Oh, come on, relax.
Oh, my God, Bill. I couldn't do it. Oh, is the car coming? Just, oh, my God, they're going to hit us. Oh, it's...
Okay, hit the brakes, hit the
Oh,
brakes.
my
Right.
Jesus.
Now you're driving.
If anybody hasn't been in a Tesla self-driving car, please do so because these are exactly the emotions that we go through. And the emotions are very simple. All she was asked to do was to take her hands off, nothing else. She lost control. You, ladies and gentlemen, are in a world which is changing. So this is not the scream of a grandmother losing control. This is the scream of the accountants when the computers walk in. This is the scream of the lawyers when Ross comes in. This is the scream of humanity when technology is being hit.
So Tarek, this is a wake-up call?
Yes, absolutely. So I wanted to share this with you because I think we need to have an internal shift, an internal change, because yes, we're scared, but there's so much hope. And people like Sanjay give us that hope. People like Naveen are nurturing young minds to build that hope. So I wanted to share this with you, and this is not going to work. Not going to work? You've taken control away from me. Keep going, next one. There's just one slide left, and then I will, happiness is one of them. Happiness is a decision. I always keep saying that. How many people are happy in this room? That's amazing. That's the happiest room I've ever seen. So well done. Whatever you guys are on, please, afterwards, can you give that to me too? Because I need to raise my happiness level. Next slide, please. Okay, it's working. Now, this is one of my favorite slides, is that we are living our lives, Sanjay, with one eye on the microscope, and the other eye on the telescope in the future. So in terms of your journeys and your learnings and so on, how do we break our brain into two halves and focus on the present while actually engaging with the future? This is one of the biggest dilemmas we face, and I dare say most of our group there faces.
I think it's called multitasking, right?
Pardon?
I said I think it's called multitasking.
Monkey task.
No, anyway, jokes apart. I think what's important, I think, as I said earlier during our conversation, was that we need to be observant. This is something which will only lead you to do things keeping in view with how the change and shift is happening. Coming back to Arcadia, I mentioned to you that Naveen, I meet your dad very frequently. He shared the idea of this school with me long time back, and I said to him, why are you doing this? He looked at me, he says, I have plenty of time. I want to give back to the society what I want to do. And his idea was not doing the run-of-the-mill school. he told me about the tie-up we had with Apple and all of that. And he says, I am going to bring the 21st century education into Dubai. Because if there is any person who is dead serious about Dubai, that is Mr. Mohan Valrani. And he was not doing it for the love of economic returns. I think he did that to bring in a perspective into this education platform and saying, yes, you can do this and you can do this well if you have the right perspective in mind. So coming back to your question, if we are in a current situation in businesses and looking around and saying, this is what we want to do, and we see the changes which are happening around us, the quicker you adapt and start thinking, and it need not necessarily be that you have to think alone, because today there's a lot of professional help which is available. There are a lot of people who will perhaps come and sit down with you and exchange experiences. I think again it boils down to individuals. The fear of unknown sometimes takes you to newer pastures and this thing. And those who take that risk will get the reward.
One of the key questions I ask myself, and perhaps you need to ask every single day, if whatever I was doing, I could not fail, or if what I wanted to do, the failure is not going to ever happen, what are the decisions I am going to make? In other words, remove failure from that equation completely, and then see how your decisions start changing. I have one more fun video for you to have a laugh and for you to visualize the future, and then we close. This one is about how we are going to live in the future. And, you know, Sanjay is going to have this beautiful development in the palm, but all of us will probably, in 10 years' time, own one of these things, which is how life is changing.
Moving life forward.
The future, Sanjay has given us some of his thoughts. You have asked questions. And a big round of applause for Sanjay for sharing his experiences. And it's wonderful to see somebody with so much experience, success, but with such great humility and open, candid conversation. So it's really, really special to have. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Privilege as usual. And we have the great Naveen Valrani to look forward to. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manchanda, and thank you, Mr. Tariq Qureshi, for the wonderful conversation. And lots of knowledge has been shared. And I think it will last for us for a long, long time. Thank you once again. I would request our chairman, C.A. Naveen Sharma, to please come on the stage to felicitate our speaker and Mr. Tariq Qureshi.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
So before we move to the next session, I would request other speaker of the day, Mr. Naveen Valrani. So the emergence of global economy, global knowledge economy, has put a premium on learning throughout the world. Lifelong learning is becoming a necessity, and it's becoming increasingly critical for the countries and individuals to compete in the global knowledge economy. Focusing on this theme, we have our next session called Learning for Life, how learning will keep you competitive in the global knowledge economy. And our speaker for this session is Mr. Naveen Valrani, CEO of Arcadia Education and board member of Al-Shirawi Group. And to introduce Mr. Naveen Valrani, I would request CA Sangeeta Nahar to please come on the stage.
They had 28 years of experience and had one goal since the game was launched in the Asian Games. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time since the sport was introduced at the Asian Games in 1990, the Indian men's kabaddi team will be returning home without gold. This tells us how important learning for life is. To speak to us on this very practical topic, we have with us Mr. Naveen Valrani. Naveen today is the CEO of Arcadia Education, the Al-Shirawi venture into K-12 education. He also heads up the group's engineering services, consisting of 11 companies, 7 JVs, and over 5,000 employees. He also sits on the board of the group. Naveen has also served as the chairman of the Young Presidents Organization and has been on the board for 5 years. In his spare time, he enjoys giving back to his alma mater, being on the board of the overseers at UPenn School, as well as Wharton Executive Board. In 2014, Naveen instituted the Monica and Naveen Valnari Scholarship Fund to support female students to attend both the schools. Naveen was also an integral part of the campaign committee at London Business School to successfully raise over £100 million in the school's first ever fundraising campaign. Happily married with 2 sons, his wife Monica runs the Ladybird chain of nursery schools in Dubai. Naveen also teaches the renowned junior MBA program at the Arcadia Preparatory School, a primary school business program that he founded and is extremely passionate about. Friends, please join me in welcoming Mr. Naveen Valrani.
So firstly, I want to thank you. I want to thank the Indian Chartered Accountants Association for inviting me for the second time. I've been here once before with all of you. That time I spoke about the 100-year life, and this time I've been asked to speak about learning for life. I'd like to thank in particular your chairman, CA Naveen Sharma. I've had the pleasure of working with him for as long as I actually remember. And he's a phenomenal man, a phenomenal father. And also I've had the pleasure of actually meeting his son as well and his wife, and his daughter. So again, thank you very, very much, Naveen, for inviting me. Before I dive into what I'm going to say today, I actually want to dedicate this event to the victims of Kerala. It is very, very unfortunate what is happening, or what has happened in that state. 16 out of 18 districts, I believe, are affected, and thousands or hundreds have lost their lives, millions are displaced, and I just thought I'd take a moment to acknowledge the tragedy of what's happened in Kerala. It's never easy to follow Mr. Manchanda and Mr. Qureshi. I know both of them reasonably well. Sanjay has done an unbelievable job. You know, its $16 billion turnaround is record-breaking, not only from a region perspective, but from a global perspective. And he's a very humble man, and that came out in today's talk. In fact, I think Sanjay has so much more to share, but I think at the risk of not sounding too show-off, he probably held back. But, so it's very, very difficult to follow Sanjay. It's also very difficult to follow Tariq. I think Tariq might have disappeared somewhere. But Tariq is, has created this concept of Mad Talks and is the only genuine competitor to TED Talks. So it's actually quite remarkable that he's taking on a global company, and he himself should actually be a speaker standing up here. I'd also like to acknowledge my family, some of my family that's here today. My wife is here, my in-laws are here, and my son is here. So I have to be on my very, very best behavior. So you're going to see, maybe a different side of Naveen today. And last but not least, I want to acknowledge the members of the Al-Shrawi group that are in the audience. A lot of my management team is here, and it's really a pleasure always to interact with them in any way, shape, or form. And I'm sorry if you were forced to be dragged out of bed on a Saturday morning to hear me. But again, it's an honor and a pleasure to address you among the others. So I was actually asked by Naveen to speak today. It's his second last week as chair of the association. And I'm thinking, he actually gave me a choice. He said, would you like to speak this week with Sanjay, which obviously is a great honor, or would you like to speak next week? But what he didn't tell me was that Dia Mirza is speaking next week. And as good looking as Sanjay is, it's a little bit of a tough competition when it comes to comparing him with Dia Mirza. But I'm here today. And Naveen, for those of you that know Naveen, and you'll know where I'm coming from, but Naveen, in his usual style, gave me a selection of 5 topics. He gave me a choice of 5 topics from which I could choose, which one I wanted to speak on. And then in his last line in his email said, or any other topic that you can think of. And I actually chose learning for life, although I am least bit qualified to probably talk about this, and I'll explain you why as we go on. So I want to start with just the most simple Indian greeting, Namaste. And this is such a beautiful greeting, because for me, this represents what India is all about. It's about humility. And if you see this young girl, she's bowing, she's adoring, and that's what Namah means, and she's doing it to you. And it really, really signifies what we all are about as a culture. So, I love this picture, and I always like to start many of my presentations with Namaste. So I've been asked to speak about lifelong learning, and I'm not the most qualified person in the room, for sure, to talk about this. In fact, when that was one of my choices, what I told Naveen was that while I don't think I'm qualified, the approach I'm going to take today is to share with you my life story and what I have done. And hopefully through that, there will be some lessons to be learned, to be shared, and there will be some mistakes also that I put up there. I have never shared my life story on a stage. It's not typically, typically I don't like talking about myself, but I figured, that is the best approach for someone who does not feel that they're fully qualified to talk about this subject. So should I be here? I'm not sure. My story is not the perfect story, but it is a story among 7.5 billion people out there. And hopefully you will gain something by the end of today's session. So first and foremost, I want to start with my community. I am part of the Sindhi community. How many Sindhis do we have in the room? Okay, just a handful. 3. Okay, at least 3 are admitting to be Sindhis. 4. And I'm I'm a Hindu by birth. And Hindu Sindhis were in this unique situation in 1947. We were part of an area, as you know, called Sindh, which was going to Pakistan. So we were faced, our community was faced with a choice. And that choice was, should we migrate to what was going to be India, or should we remain in Pakistan? Now, the expectation at the time was that the majority of Sindhis would remain in Pakistan because the Hindu Sindhis and the Muslim Sindhis had a fantastic relationship at the time. Does anyone know in the room what percentage of Hindu Sindhis migrated to India? What percentage? Anyone take a guess? 35, I heard? So it was about 50%. 775,000 Sindhis out of about 1.5 million Hindu Sindhis migrated to India. So now you can imagine this population of 775,000 individuals migrating to India and having absolutely no state. We were stateless. In fact, we're stateless till this day. And we came to India. And when you look around the world today and what's happening in the world, the expected reaction would be for us to fight for a state. But that was not the reaction of the Sindhi community. It was actually quite the opposite. By and large, the community accepted that we will not have a state. In fact, Sindh is mentioned, as you know, in our national anthem. And there is some talk out there to actually remove the word Sindh from the national anthem. And I hope at least that remains, because that's the one thing we have when it comes to our homeland of India. But we actually decided, our community decided, that we will not fight for a state. Instead, we will educate our young. We will look abroad. We will be ambitious. We will spread all over the world. And that's exactly what the Sindhi community did. So when you go, there are, major metropolitan cities that are dominated by Sindhi businessmen, or businesses are dominated by Sindhis. Hong Kong is one of them. Lagos, Dubai, New York has its fair share, London. So there are cities now where Sindhis have done very, very well. And the reason why Sindhis decided to go outside of India was because, as you know, India was relatively socialist for a very, very long time. So opportunities for growth were very, very limited. And the Sindhis knew that. The Sindhi leaders knew, the Hindu Sindhi leaders knew that. So they decided that, you know what, we're going to look abroad. So I am part of a community that has always, from the time it arrived in India, been very, very ambitious. I carry that weight on my shoulders every single day, and it motivates me every single day. That this is a community that has no state, and that was forced to survive. A lot of them were very wealthy in what is now Pakistan, but arrived in India with no money. Okay, giving up everything, all their assets. Just to put this in perspective, there's about this many Syrian refugees today as there were Hindu Sindhis that arrived in India. That's the magnitude of how big that migration was. So my lesson from my community is study your family's history. Study your community's history. There's important lessons to be found there. Family. I think no presentation of mine, when it comes on a personal level, would be complete without talking about my father. He unfortunately is not here today, but he sent a little note to Naveen Sharma yesterday that make sure this session is recorded, because I want to hear what Naveen has to say. So I'm sure he's sitting up in London waiting for this video recording to reach him. But Mohan Valrani has been critical when it comes to the development of my family. You know, there's a saying, a saying that I heard, that in every single family, one generation has to sacrifice. That generation for my family is Mohan Valrani. He was brought up, he arrived as a young boy in India, actually started up in Baroda. How many of you from Gujarat? So Mohan Valrani's rise, his education actually happened in Baroda. He actually attended Baroda University. So he owes a lot to the state of Gujarat. Not many people, I don't think anyone in this audience probably knows this, but the secret of Mohan Valrani's rise was actually his mother. So when Mohan Valrani graduated from college, his father, my grandfather, had developed a nice little ice business in Baroda. And his expectation was that my father would join his business and they would live as one happy family. But my grandmother was a Sindhwarki. Now, for those of you that are not Sindhi, you're probably wondering, what is a Sindhwarki? A Sindhwarki was sort of the blue blood of Sindhis. And from her perspective, she had actually married down when she married my grandfather. So she always had this ambition that, like her family, my father should go abroad. So she reached out to a few of her relatives and she told my father that you must go abroad. You must make a life for yourself. India is not for you. So she encouraged Mohan Valrani to go abroad. And Mohan Valrani, when he left India, and this is quite ironic, it wasn't his mother that was crying. It was actually his father that was crying. So, my grandmother saw him off with great pride and great hope, and he ended up first in Japan. And he ended up as a telex operator. So he was an office manager, a secretary managing a little office. And he very, very humble beginnings. He then got this opportunity in Dubai from another relative of my grandmother. And he came here to manage a small textile operation. And the rest, as they say, is history. But one very other important event in my father's life was his marriage. In 1967, he had started to make enough money where he was still a manager, but where his parents said, like a lot of Indian parents, it's time for you to get married. So, we've lined up a few girls. Please come over to Bombay and have a look. My father was into work. I mean, for those of you that know him, Sanjay alluded to him. He is non-stop 24/7. So he ended up flying over to India and flying over to Bombay, and he pretty much had decided that the first girl he sees, he's going to say yes. Why? Because he wanted to go back to Dubai and get back to work. Don't ever do that. There's no lesson out of this. So he saw my mother, said yes, and went right back. And the next time he saw her was the day they were getting married. But my mother, too, was from a family of very well-educated individuals. She went at the time, she was attending Sophia College in Bombay. Anyone from Sophia College in Bombay here? Any women? No one? So very, very famous college in Bombay. Brilliant student. She dropped out of college and said, it's time to get married. And her father, who she never actually spent much time with, was a famous judge in what is today Pakistan, but it's Sindh in those days. So he got married, came here, and they stayed. My father was very, very ambitious. And they both stayed in a little apartment. It was a staff apartment in Dubai. Now, the lesson from what I've told you is behind every successful man, there is a woman, and vice versa. Behind every successful woman, there is a man. Make sure you find yours. In my father's case, it was his mother. And then it followed to his wife. So my lesson from just hearing his story is that there is a woman out there that has made me successful. And similarly, there is a partner for all of you out there that has or will make you successful. So to continue the story, these are pictures that have never been shown in public before. This is my elder brother. The two kids are my elder brother Sumit and myself, and my father and mother in a small, tiny apartment in Bar, Dubai, in what was, and I think it still may be, the Bank of Baroda building. It was opposite the BBME building in those days. Tiny little apartment. Most days the lift wouldn't work. We were on the 6th floor. We'd be walking up and down. And the beauty of that time was Dubai was a very small place. And travel wasn't very common. And we got all the attention, my brother and I, and of course my younger brother followed a few years later. But my elder brother and I got all the attention from our parents. We used to see our dad working tremendously hard and leading by example. In fact, you know, the lessons that when I look at this story, I remember a lot of my childhood. The first thing that this picture tells me is that where you live doesn't matter. Now this probably goes against everything that Dubai stands for today, because Dubai today is all about addresses. You know, are you living in the Palm? Are you living in Business Bay? Are you living in Emirates Hills? It's all about this new Dubai. But there is this beautiful old Dubai that actually, ironically, is also being developed and redeveloped right now. There is a Dera market that's being redeveloped by or developed by Nakhil and by Sanjay, Sanjay overseeing that. There's Emaar doing the whole Creek Harbor. But where you live, quite honestly, really doesn't matter. What matters is, for me, leading by example. And my father really, really led by example. Growing up, in the early days, he didn't travel as much. But then he ended up traveling a lot. But whenever he was in Dubai, he made it a point to spend time with us. He wasn't here much. He was growing this global business, but he did spend time with us. And really, two lessons that he gave me growing up, and I wanted to share with you, were very, very important to me. The first was, I remember when I was about 11 years old and sort of first starting to experience this concept of exams and tests, I didn't know how to study. How to study is an art in itself or a science in itself. I didn't know how to study. And many, many children grow up today just not knowing how to study. Schools don't teach you how to study. They teach you subjects. But how are you supposed to understand what's happening in that subject? How are you supposed to go home and prepare for a test or an exam? So I remember my father opening up a history book with me, my history textbook, taking a pen. In those days, highlighters weren't very popular, but taking a pen and underlining important lines as you read them. Until today, I underline, or actually highlight now, important things. I do it on my iPad now, times have changed. But just highlighting as I read. And that's a skill that I picked up from my father. The second lesson that my father gave me that I've always remembered, he told me and my brothers, growing up, he says, before you go to college, and you all will love this, you must know accountancy. You have to know accountancy. Until today, he is diehard about that. He says it for my children, that you have to know accountancy. It's very, very important. I've taken that a little bit further with my children. And I've said, firstly, I didn't do it at school. My father insisted that we do it at school. But I said, before you graduate college, you not only need to know accountancy, and accountancy is very important, but you should take an elementary course in finance. Now, why finance? And Naveen Sharma and I have talked about this. I think it's important to know accountancy to understand how things work. But when you want to make big money, when you want to experience big money, you need to know finance. And I've come across a lot of accountants that unfortunately don't know finance. So if you've done your CA and you want to look for another qualification, the CFA is a great qualification. It's very important that you know how to read balance sheets, but you know how to value companies. And that is a very, very important skill set in today's world. So my lifelong learning lesson from the story that I've just told you is not to worry about telling your family what they should be doing. It's about worrying more about what you should be doing. So when I looked at my father traveling the world, he didn't need to tell me anything. I just looked at him and I said, I want to be like my father. And you have various role models in your life who are not necessarily telling you what you should do. They're just behaving in certain ways that makes you inspire them and want to be like them. So, my education. And what's great about this slide is that it proves that I did have hair once upon a time. The importance of education. Education was always emphasized in my family. In fact, it was, my mother was very proud that she finished first in all India in Hindi in her 12th. My father always believed in a strong British education, and the Indian system was based on a British education. And education was always a priority. I remember my mother spending a lot of time teaching us while we were in primary school. I remember my father teaching us study skills. And when I got my grades, I used to be nervous if I didn't do well to bring them back home, because I wanted to meet the expectations like most children do of their parents. I've got a second bullet point up there, and I've put that up there because now as I was introduced, I'm in the world of education. And grades, and this is easier said than done, because when you're a student, you love to get good grades. But grades, honestly, are not important. I can tell you from a teacher perspective, the only reason we issue grades is to change behaviors. So when you assign somebody a C, or you give them a low percentage, it's to actually enable them to do better, to try and do better the next time. It's purely a behavioral play, nothing else. So it's actually a little manipulative on behalf of the education fraternity on what they do with grades. What really matters is, what are you truly learning? And it's easier, again, it's difficult to apply this when you're growing up, but as you get to, sort of our ages, you then begin to say, how can I apply this to the real world? And that sort of understanding is more important. I remember the day I got into UPenn. In those days, there was no internet. So we would get envelopes. And if you had a thick envelope, it means there was an admission letter in there. If you had a thin envelope, it means you were rejected. I remember coming home, and I had a big, fat, thick envelope sitting there from the University of Pennsylvania. And I turned it over, and I was very excited, and there was a sellotape on the seal, which obviously meant that somebody had opened it. Any guesses who had opened it? My father. So my father obviously couldn't resist the temptation of giving me the pleasure of opening my admission letter, so he opened it, and then he told his secretary that, seal it again to make sure that Naveen doesn't realize that I've opened it. His secretary obviously didn't do a very good job. We had a piece of sellotape there. But, it didn't matter. Privacy didn't matter in those days. I know privacy is a huge deal these days. Everyone's talking about privacy. Your kids are talking about privacy. Like, we have no privacy at home. The internet is all about privacy now. In those days, privacy didn't matter. Like, who cared about privacy? This is my dad. He wants to open my envelope, let him open it. I have no secrets. But for some reason, in the current generation, with the current set of millennials, with Gen Z, privacy is a huge, huge issue. How did I get into UPenn? I actually don't know. But they obviously saw something in me that said, that we want this boy from Dubai, from the desert, to be part of the University of Pennsylvania. Growing up, you see another picture there. Does anyone know who this character is? Gordon Gekko. So growing up, the big movie, the Oscar-winning movie was Wall Street. And I saw the movie, and this gentleman, Gordon Gekko, who was the villain of the movie, turned out to be a worldwide hero. He was the villain of the movie. Now, at the time I watched this, I was quite young. I actually didn't understand what was going on in the movie. But just to watch Gordon Gekko, the way he dressed, his hair, his style, everybody wanted to be like Gordon Gekko. And I was no exception. I went to Wharton wanting to be like Gordon Gekko. His speech, greed is good. You know, greed is the very spirit of America. Greed cuts. Greed clarifies. It was mesmerizing. Everybody wanted to be like that. Wanted to stand in front of a room full of shareholders and deliver that kind of speech. Wall Street, for the lack of a better word, was very sexy. So I went to Wharton with that dream. Now, in coming back to just my growing up, there is this always in everyone's life, at least one teacher that you will remember growing up. Similarly, there was one teacher that believed in me. It was my economics teacher. And I was a very shy boy in school, and he actually looked at me and he saw my work was, I guess, of a good standard. And he said, you know, Naveen, I want you to teach the class. I want you to teach the class today. And that changed my life. So never ever underestimate the power of a teacher. The Wharton dream, Gordon Gekko, me going to Philadelphia. I'd never been to America. And I landed there. My parents, you know, these days, who has children who have either gone to college in the West or are in college in the West? Okay, so just keep your hands up. Just keep your hands up. How many of you dropped your children off at college? Keep your hands up. Okay, so I just saw one, maybe maximum two hands going down. Everyone else dropped their children to college. My father or my mother never dropped me to college. Wasn't a done thing in those days. And you know, we were, as a family, going through a financial crisis in those days. So, you know, saving money was extremely important. So you can imagine this young boy in the world, you know, there's no internet, no cable TV, you don't know what America's about, landing with 2 suitcases. That was my life in the United States. And having to do everything on his own. You know, these days we open the children's bank account, we get their bed sheets, we get their pillows, everyone wants to make sure everything is perfect. There's nothing perfect, you know. I didn't even know what to eat, let alone have my room set up for me. So going with this Wall Street, and you know, before I move off this slide, growing up, I sat next to a very dear friend of mine who was a brilliant student, absolutely a brilliant student. He was much, much better than me, and I constantly learned from him. He was and is my best friend. And I was always learning from him. We studied together, we did a lot of things together, and it was just a joy to be with someone who was smarter than you all the time. So my lesson from this slide is that learning can come in different forms. It can come through school, it can come through your friends, it can come through movies, and it can even come in your dreams. Learning can come from anywhere. So, marriage. You know, how did I meet my wife? I was introduced to my wife by a mutual friend, my cousin, her friend, and it was on a spring break in London. So I got a cheap ticket to go to London. It was like $160, I remember. So we had a week off, so I flew with a friend to London. I was staying with another friend. And there I met my future wife. We fell in love. In those days, we believed in long-distance relationships. And this is without Skype. This is without WhatsApp calling. This is without BOTIM. I should say the right things here in Dubai. This is without BOTIM. And we fell in love, and 2.5 years was long distance. We'd see each other every 3-4 months, once, for a week or so. So it was very much a love marriage, and I graduated from college wanting to work hard only for one reason, so I could marry my girlfriend in those days, and now my wife. That was my motivator. So I came back here, joined the Al-Shravi group, and worked and worked and worked so that I could prove to my parents that I was ready for marriage. Now, I take it that most of you in the room are married. How many of you are married? Okay, everyone almost. How many of you, keep your hands up please, how many of you have had an arranged marriage? So again, probably about 90% of you. Now, the reason I have this up there, I know arranged marriages mean the world to many Indian communities out there. But in my case, my love marriage worked out perfectly. Okay, so I would be careful in setting those rules for your children, because love is such a special thing, and to deny that in any way, shape, or form to your children would actually be quite sad. I married very young. I married at the age of 23 and a half. And actually, my first experience with lifelong learning started with my wife. So we got married, and in true Indian style, in those days particularly, it wasn't accepted. Now this is Dubai of 1994, 95. It wasn't accepted for women, at least not in our family, to work in all jobs. There's only certain industries in those days that women could work in. Now that has obviously changed. But so my wife and I sat down, and she said, like many spouses do, that I'm bored. What do I do? And she was right. So we sat down and sort of went through options on what she could do first. That's the sad tragedy of being a woman, at least in those days. And one of the things that came up was education. So my wife decided to be a teacher after marriage. She said, I'm going to educate myself to be a teacher. And that's exactly what she did. She qualified as a teacher and then went on to teach in an early years setting, in a nursery setting. So my lesson from this is marry well. There is no better teacher than your partner. Now, marrying well does not necessarily mean marrying rich. Of course, it would help, but it doesn't always necessarily mean marrying rich. And I think that's important, particularly from an Indian perspective, because I know for a lot of the believers of arranged marriages out there, wealth plays an important role in determining who your partner or the selection of your child's partner should be. In this case, I married well. I married a lady who's now an educator, and she's a brilliant teacher, and we teach each other every day. My children, again, with my children, I took the approach of leading by example. This is not what they look like today, by the way. One of my elder son is at the University of Pennsylvania, studying philosophy, politics, and economics, and my younger one is in school here. But I think the story I want to tell you here is how my wife and I chose their school. So, most of us will choose a school based on academics. What are the grades? What are the results? Where do people end up going to college? Quite honestly, now that I'm an educator, if you take a child and put them in a room, literally, you put them in a room and lock them up, 15 years later, they would have learned. They would have developed. And science has proven this. There's the natural development of the brain. So there's, you have to question what value truly is being added in a school environment. When it came to our children, my wife and I said what's important to us is that when they look back at their journey in school, they should say that we had a great time in school. That is the most important thing. And which school is able to deliver that? Now, all of us can think back to our school days. For some of us, it was miserable. For some of us, it was great. But I think what's important is if it was great, you think back and you smile because the first crush you had, either for a girl or for a boy, depending on which gender you're part of, you remember that. We all remember that. Okay, the first teacher that believed in you, the first time you were patted on the back in school. Those are the kind of memories you remember. So it's important to choose a school, at least for us, that built those memories. And that's the school that we chose. We chose the American School of Dubai in those days. And then in terms of upbringing, we tried our best not to tell our children what they should do. We tried our best to lead by example. Both of us are educators today. I continued studying. So, I went through a phase when I was doing my MBA that I was studying and my children were studying for exams at the same time. At the same time, we were doing assignments. I was up all night doing assignments, and they were too. So it was an interesting phase. So I never actually had to tell them what they had to do. They would see me studying, and that would be motivating enough. So the lesson is, you are an ambassador for life, for me, and just never forget it. So just to dive in a bit more into education, I decided to do my MBA at the age of 40. 40 years old. And why did I decide to do my MBA at the age of 40? As was said earlier, I didn't need to do my MBA. In fact, if you look at my peer group in the Al-Shravi group, they thought I was crazy. Why is Naveen doing his MBA at the age of 40? He's well settled, everything's going well. What's the need? So at the age of 40, for me, it was kind of halfway through my life. And it's one of those times. Is anyone younger than 40 here? Everybody's older. Oh, okay. So when you hit 40, it's a good time to take stock of your life, which is what I did. I took stock of my life, and I said, what are the things that I wanted to do that I didn't do? Now, growing up, and even till today, there was this magazine called The Economist. And in those days, I would take the hard print of The Economist, and at the back, at least the last 10, 15 pages, were ads of MBA schools. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but loads and loads of ads of MBA schools. And I said, I used to look at that magazine, and I literally read nothing of the magazine. I found the articles too boring growing up. I would just go to the back pages and turn page to page and see different schools and say, I want to be part of one of these schools. So, I chose my MBA. I chose London Business School because they had a Dubai-London program. And, London Business School has a Dubai campus. And I remember opening the Financial Times and seeing London Business School as #1 in those days in terms of ranking globally. So I said, it's in Dubai, #1 ranking, why not? So I did my GMAT and ended up doing an MBA just to check a box. But I can tell you, having done my MBA, it is one of the most useful degrees that I have ever done. It gave me a toolkit. It took me back to accounting and finance. And Naveen did help me in one of my accounting assignments. And it allowed me to think big. When you do an MBA, by definition, you are around ambitious people. Everybody wants to build something bigger and better, and that rubs off. So, my lesson from this was stay young, stay healthy, stay hungry. Because the MBA made me feel a lot younger. Tariq, when he saw me this morning, he said, how do you keep in shape? I keep in shape because actually I have to attribute that back to my MBA program. Because the MBA program, I was around young people, and these people wanted to stay in shape, and they wanted to make the world a better place, and they were ambitious. So, as Sanjay said, you don't know when opportunity comes knocking on your door. And for him, his journey from PwC to the CEO of Nakheel is remarkable. On a much smaller scale, for me, my father had this dream of building schools, and the dream that he discussed with Sanjay. In fact, all of our schools, we have one school right now, we're building 3 more, are all on Nakheel properties. So you can see how close my father is to Sanjay and how much he respects his opinion. But all of our schools and our future footprint will be on Nakheel properties, and as far as Dubai is concerned. But my father came to me once he had decided to start the schools and said, I want you to be part of the board of the school, and I want you to be the CEO of the school. Now, I knew, okay, I was associated with the world of education, but I knew nothing about how to run a school. I had run corporate businesses. I hadn't worked around children. My only qualification probably was that I had a wife who was running nurseries at the time. So I said yes. And for me, it was a chance to hit what I call a reset button. And life, it's very rare for someone who's, I think was 44 at the time, to be given such a chance. But when it comes, I decided to grab it. And the first thing I did, I told my dad that I want to be qualified. So I went back to school. I just graduated from a Master of Science in Education from the University of Pennsylvania again. And it was a phenomenal 13-month journey, a lot of hard work. I spent a lot of time on flights going to Philadelphia. But it was invigorating. And I can tell you, to be around children at any age is fantastic. It's just so, so rewarding. So for me, this dream, I think I always had this passion for education, and I thank my father for allowing me to live that dream. But dreams can knock on your door at any age. Sanjay, how old were you when Nikhil came knocking? 51. I was 44 when this came knocking. Now, for most of us, if you speak to, let's say, our elders, and they'll say, you're 50, you should be thinking of retirement. 45, oh, your children should be getting married in the next 5-7 years. You should be thinking that, like that. But Sanjay didn't think like that. I didn't think like that. Marriage of children, okay, they'll get married. They'll live their life. They'll find someone. I don't need to worry about my children. And Sanjay also gave this creative space, he told us, to his children. But opportunity can come at any age. And when it comes, you've got to be there. You've got to be ready to grab it. So just the last couple of slides. We have this debate constantly, is money important? And I know it's easy to go back and be philosophical and say, happiness is more important than money. Money doesn't always bring happiness. I can tell you, in my early life, till I got into education, money was extremely important. It was extremely important. I wanted to make a lot of money. I was thinking of Gordon Gekko. That's how, by the way, his character in Wall Street 2 ended up looking. But unlike, let's say, Naveen Valrani Part 1, who grew up, getting inspired by Gordon Gekko, Naveen Valrani Part 2 was more inspired by the gentleman on the bottom of the screen, Warren Buffett, because he gave back. Gordon Gekko had a very, very bad ending. He split from his family. His daughter never spoke to him, for those of you that saw Wall Street 2. Warren Buffett leads a very simple, happy life. He's one of the richest men in the world. But he gives back. And he gives back because it's a lot easier, and he said this himself, to give than to make. And it's a lot more fun. So my lesson from this whole money issue and this money debate, and I read this recently in a book called Educated. And if you haven't, if you're fond of reading, it was actually listed by President Obama a few days ago as one of the top 5 books he read this summer. And I actually read that book this summer as well. It's called Educated. It's by Tara Westwood. And she says something in that book. It's about this girl brought up in a poor Mormon family who's denied an education by her father and ends up doing a PhD at Cambridge. But she says something in this book that really struck home with me. And she said money is important because it gives you the luxury of not having to think of money. Now just think about that. If you don't have money, all you're thinking about is, how do I make money? But when you do have money, not only does it give you choice, It gives you the luxury to pursue the kind of dreams that I'm pursuing, that Sanjay is pursuing. So money is very important. At least to me it was. Luck. Now this is another big debate that happens across communities and in families. You know, is luck important? And a lot of people say you make your own luck. You know, you decide your destiny. And some of us who are a little bit more religious say, you know, everything is pre-written. Well, I can tell you that luck has played a huge role in my life. Being in the right place at the right time. And the reason I have this picture up of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, and I selected this particular picture of him. There's many out there. But I selected this particular picture of him because this picture of him, for me, signifies what he has done for me as an individual, for my family, for this city, and for this country. I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid. My father wouldn't be where he is if it wasn't for Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid. Nakheel wouldn't be there. Al-Shrawi Group wouldn't be there. One single man's ambition has driven this entire city. And you know, if I was religious, after God, if there's one person I can attribute my success to, it is this particular individual. Because he has given me and many others a ton of opportunities. And will continue to do so. And will continue to do so. I have that faith in him. So, you know, luck does play a role. Being born in the right place at the right time, being born into the right family. It's luck. If my parents conceived me 5 minutes later, I'd be a different person. It's just luck. And being introduced to my wife. I met her on one particular fine day, just for a split moment. It's luck. Now, again, they're different words. People say destiny, they say faith, they say. But at the end of the day, you have to believe that there are forces outside of your control that will play a role in how your life plays out. So, my lesson is do not underestimate the power of luck. The results, so after having gone through this journey, today I make a difference to 5,000 families. I have 5,000 employees in what we call the engineering services side of Al-Shrawi Group. And as a result, I walk into work every day, my management team walks into work every day, knowing that every decision of theirs will impact 5,000 families. That's a huge, huge motivator, at least for me. Education. So we've built this beautiful little school, and those are pictures of me actually in the school teaching. 450 families will walk through Arcadia's doors on tomorrow actually, first day of school. We've just completed 2 years of operation. Now a lot of people say, you know, the school market is competitive, there's an oversupply, Dubai is going through a difficult time. Let me tell you one thing. I have never let macroeconomic excuses play a role in how we should run our companies. There is always a space, always a niche for every single company in every single industry to do well, regardless of the macroeconomic situation. I know a lot of people are saying Dubai is going through a difficult time. I'll be dead honest. If we look at our numbers, and Naveen Sharma is here, he's our director of internal audit, so he knows better than anyone of what's happening in the Al-Shrawi Group. We are showing revenue growth even today, even in today's Dubai environment. We continue to make CapEx investments, capital investments, at record-breaking pace. We're building more schools. We're building more factories. We're building labor accommodation. We are not stopping. We have this great belief in Dubai. And I don't want to get into why we believe in Dubai because that's another 1-hour talk. I sit today on multiple boards with this sole mission, and these are non-profit boards, of increasing access to education. there are still many, many people out there, millions, hundreds of millions, that do not have access to education. And my mission, both with Arcadia and in the nonprofit boards that I serve, is to increase that access. And as was said in my introduction, I've introduced my own curriculum, which I teach at the Arcadia Preparatory School. It's the junior MBA program. And it's about teaching children, students, to develop their cognitive skills through the business ideas. So it's actually a phenomenal program, one that I'm very, very proud of. In all my achievements in the last, in my 25-year professional journey, if there's one thing that I would hopefully in my eulogy will be said, was that I founded this particular program to teach children how to go on and make a difference in the world. I've had the good fortune of Tariq visiting me in school, and it was really, it was a phenomenal experience, I think, for me and for him, where we got to spend time with children. So, the lifelong learning lesson for me is be willing to teach others as you learn what life teaches you. Now, the next slide. This is a very short 1-minute clip of a young girl, she's 10 years old, who's in my class. And she's asked the question, what have you learned in your junior MBA? It's about the junior MBA. It's 1 minute long. So we can start from the beginning. It's 1 minute long, and if we just listen, and for me this is...
learned how to make spreadsheets. It's how to make up our own business ideas.
Can you start again?
We've been
You can escape it. So to me, this has been the most rewarding piece of gratitude that I've received in my professional career, and hopefully you'll see why. Go ahead.
in junior MBA, we've learned how to make spreadsheets, how to make up our own business ideas. We've been looking at different people that started companies like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. My keynote presentation skills have gotten better by being braver, making longer sentences, writing more things. Because when I first started the keynote, I only wrote like a few words. Bill Gates inspires me because he did a lot of great things, and he gave most of his money away to charity, and he became a really intelligent man.
So this is a 10-year-old girl talking about spreadsheets, keynote presentations, Bill Gates versus Steve Jobs, and she wasn't correct. These are the kind of things that I'm trying to teach in class. So, further lessons that I learned and that I practice is admit to my failures. I've had many of them, and I admit to them daily. Relationships matter. They really do matter. Nurture them. It is a lot easier and much more satisfying to give back than to actually make money. Don't take life too seriously. If there's any audience I should be saying this to, it's probably the audience that sits in front of me today. As chartered accountants, you have worked so hard to firstly get your qualification and to get to where you are today. And as a result, some of you, if not the majority of you, have forgotten what it feels like to have fun. So, go back, have a smile, have a laugh. Problems will come, problems will go. Everything in life is temporary. It's important that you have a good time. And my perspective, this is really the last point, my perspective on life and beyond is that I'm 47 today. I have a son in university. I have a wife that does very, very well her early years, nurseries. I have another son who's working very, very hard to get into the university of his choice. And I reached a stage where, you don't know what happens to you in life. But it's important that when that day comes, you should be proud that when you look back, you have lived a full life. And today when I go in to teach, every day, Naveen said I teach once a week. What he doesn't know is I'm going to be teaching 3 times a week, so I'm going to be spending less time on the corporate side and more time on the teaching side. But I think what's important is that for me, I've lived a full life, and I'm in that phase of giving back to my fellow colleagues in the Al-Sharawi group, giving back to the students in Arcadia, and it's important that for me, I do that, because again, you don't know where life takes you and when that call comes. So that's sort of my overall philosophy on life, and it's been a pleasure addressing you today. If there is questions, I'm more than happy to take them. But again, thank you very, very much for listening to me. Questions? Good? Don't take too much. Hey, thank you very, very much.
I truly appreciate you, Naveen, to willing to give your time and experience and share your story to enrich the lives of our member. I'm sure, like each one of us has learned a great deal that how to really pursue the life and pursue our goals and ambitions. It's a time to felicitate Naveen. I would like to call our chairman, C. Naveen Sharma, and our secretary, C. Anish Mehta, on the stage. I would like to call Ms. Monica Ulrani as well, and son, and the family members on the stage. Now it's time to thank our sponsors, without whom this event of this magnitude is not possible. So I would like to place on record our title sponsors are Ilco Group, our titanium sponsor Umriya Free Zone, our principal sponsors NMC Group, UAE Exchange, Canute Group, Mayur Batra Group, Shubha Real Estate, Oasis Investment and Sharabi Group, Tele Solutions, our institutional partners, Delhi Public School, our platinum sponsors, Lulu Group, Commercial Bank of Dubai, Malabar Golds and Diamonds, AGMC, IFCO Group, Al-Sharabi Group, Gulf Islamic Investments, Dubai Sports City, Aditya Birla Group, and our media partner, Televis Times. Thank you very much for you to spare the time today and listen to us.
Thank you, sir.